Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to today's Beijing+25 East Africa Youth Baraza. My name is Chiamaka Wachuku. I am the lead facilitator working with the AU Office of the Youth Envoy to bring this Youth Baraza. This this event today is co-hosted by the AU Office of the Youth Envoy and the Moremi Initiative for Women's Leadership in Africa, as well as the African members of the Beijing+25 Youth Task Force. The Baraza is part of the overall Africa Young Women Beijing+25 mobilization organized by the African Union Office of the Youth Envoy in collaboration with the African Union Women, Gender and Development Directorate, with the support of Children Investment Fund Foundation, There Is No Limit Foundation, and the members of the Steering Committee on Africa Young Women Beijing+25 Regional Consultations, Young Women Leaders Caucus of African Women Leaders Network, Moremi Initiative for Women's Leadership in Africa, Gender is My Agenda Campaign Youth Network, and the Pan-African Women's Organization Youth Desk. So today's Baraza is structured in the following manner. We will first of all have the opening remarks by our esteemed guests who are present here, and then we will be guiding the participants to their respective breakout sessions to discuss 7 themes reflecting the catalytic action coalitions, but also the current theme of the of the African Union, which is silencing the guns. Our youth participants today will be discussing one, in the first breakout session, gender-based violence; in the second, economic justice and rights; in the third, bodily autonomy and sexual and reproductive health rights; the fourth, feminist action for climate justice; fifth, technology and innovation for gender equality; sixth, feminist movement and leadership; and the seventh is youth silencing the guns. These breakout rooms will last for about 1 hour, and then we'll have 2 minutes from all of the facilitators to report back on the resolutions and discussions that were had at their breakout rooms. At this point, I would now like to give the floor to Ms. Ilwad Iman Elmi Mohammed. She's the Senior Policy Officer, Women's Rights, African Union Women, Gender and Development Directorate. And then after she's done, we'll be hearing from Ms. Anika James Dorothy, member of the Beijing+25 Youth Task Force, to provide their remarks. And then in the meantime, please do not hesitate to tweet about this event using the hashtag #AfricaYouthLead and hashtag Generation Equality. Ms. Ilwad, you now have the floor. Thank you very much for coming here today.
Thank you very much. I think everyone can hear me now. Yes, can you hear me? Yes. Good afternoon, everyone, dear youth of the East African region. On behalf of Madame Victoria Maloka, Acting Director of the Women, Gender and Development Directorate, and myself, I'm pleased to be with you to open the second consultation as part of the Beijing+25 mobilization of young African women. I would like first to congratulate the AU Youth Envoy and the wonderful team under her, as well as the strategic partners for their support, hard work, and dedication for making these consultations possible. The main objective of the African Young Women Beijing+25 regional consultations and global intergenerational dialogue is to develop an African Young Women's Manifesto to integrate the perspectives of young people in the new global blueprints that will define gender equality and women's empowerment. This consultation is an example of the endless possibilities offered by collaborating and coordinating with African citizens. Particularly today, as we promote dialogue on gender-based violence, economic justice and rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, feminist action for climate justice, technology and innovation for gender equality, feminist movement and leadership on youth silencing the guns in the context of East Africa, alongside promising the best practices, opportunities, as well as evident gaps. Our dialogues today will prove one thing, that our hope for a people-driven development for Africa must include women and young people if we wish for an inclusive continent whose citizens are engaged and empowered. In the spirit of Agenda 2063's Aspiration 6, these consultations reflect our desire for achieving shared and prosperity and well-being starting from the grassroots to the high echelons of society. This year, as you all are aware, we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the first World Conference on Women and the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action in 1995, the most progressive global blueprint for advancing women's rights. African women leaders like yourselves have been instrumental in ensuring that African women's rights were reflected and incorporated in the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. But 25 years later, not a single country can claim to have achieved gender equality. This is why this consultation will also ensure that young people develop their common position that will be integrated into the common Africa position related to the Generation Equality Action Coalitions. Africa will speak in one voice to make gender equality and women's empowerment a reality. The consultations are timely, as they take place against the backdrop of the celebration of the 10th anniversary of the first African Women's Decade on grassroots approach to gender equality and women's empowerment, which started in 2010 and ending this year. The purpose of the African Women's Decade was to accelerate the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and other EU commitments of gender equality and women's empowerment, like the Solomon Declaration on Gender Equality for Africa, the Maputo Protocol on the Rights of Women. You may also be aware that October is Women, Peace and Security Month, as we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325. As our young women raise their voices and fight for women's rights across all boards, I also want to use this platform to encourage our African men to equally participate and lend their voices to the cause. I therefore encourage you to please wear your African solidarity hats and lead Africa with excellence and define the post-Beijing 20+25 agenda that you and many young people after you will be proud of. The Women, Gender and Development Directorate is committed to walking this journey with you all the way. I wish you successful deliberations and thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ilwad, for those inspiring remarks. We will now have Ms. Anika James Dorothy from the Beijing+25 Youth Task Force to give her remarks. Ms. Anika, you have the floor now.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shamaka. The year 2020 was supposed to be a great hallmark in the gender equality space, marking 10 years since the formation of UN Women, 20 years since the passing of Resolution 1325, and 25 years since the adoption of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This was the global agenda for advancing the rights of women and girls and their empowerment everywhere. 2020 is also the launch, or was supposed to be the launch, of Generation Equality in Mexico and Paris as a multi-year, multi-partner campaign and a movement for bold action on gender equality. The Generation Equality Forum presents a vital moment in this mobilization. It is a civil society-centered, multi-stakeholder global gathering for gender equality, fundamentally rooted in the same logic that made the momentous advance of the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action possible 25 years ago. This is the power of activism, feminist solidarity, and youth and girl leadership to achieve transformative change. Therefore, the forum seeks to represent a key moment for engagement among gender equality advocates, from every sector of the society: government, civil society, private sector, entrepreneurs, trade unionists, artists, academia, and social influencers, all in order to foster a global public conversation for urgent action and accountability for gender equality. The forum will enable a feminist agenda setting and the launch of the action coalitions that have concrete, measurable targets and resourcing and funding for gender equality for the period 2020 to 2025. Each of the action coalitions will have a concrete, targeted action that is measurable. And this is an opportunity for young women to step up and take the space. The Generation Equality Forum presents a platform to support the new wave of young feminists, especially in Africa, where young women are stepping up to fill the shoes of our mothers 25 years ago by defining what feminism means today. The BEIJING+25 Youth Task Force tries in all its endeavors to ably represent youth, and that is why this consultation is very important to us. It is important that in our representation in the highest level of governances of generation equality, in the Action Coalition working groups, the Civil Society Advisory Group, the Multi-Stakeholder Group, and the core group of generation equality, that the representatives of the task force present the views and hopes and opinions of the youth globally as represented from the grassroots level all the way up to the global governance level. As such, we are committed to this process and are happy to work with the Office of the African Youth Envoy to collect your views in your respective breakout sessions to ensure that the action coalitions really represent youth voices and really chart out a roadmap for youth engagement as opposed to mere youth participation. In order to know anything that the task force is up to, kindly look out to our Facebook pages, BEIJING+25 Global Youth Task Force, and Twitter at BEIJING+25 Youth, to be consistently informed on the roadmap to Mexico in March 2021 and Paris in June 2021. With those few remarks, I thank you all and I wish you all the best in the deliberations today. And we look forward to collecting the views and the reports from these breakout sessions and channeling them to the highest levels of governance of generation equality in an effort to represent youth in all their diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anika, and she has laid a very important foundation for the discussions that we're having today. Discussions do not end here. These are discussions that the outcomes will be built on and presented at these various platforms to advance the agenda of young women in Africa. So I would like now to welcome Mrs. Letty Chiwara, the UN Women Representative to Ethiopia, AU, and the ECA. You're very welcome, ma'am.
Good afternoon, good morning to everybody, and thank you, Chiamaka. It is a pleasure for me to be part of this amazing consultation, bringing together young women and men from all over Africa. For me, engaging and having conversations with young women and men gives me energy all the time. Even now, speaking after Anika, I feel like she has taken away all the words I wanted to share earlier, which means I think I should retire. I think we have empowered our young people to actually take on the baton and move on with the agenda. I was very impressed listening to Anika and her presentation in the last few minutes. But allow me to just say a few words as you prepare to go to your group work. As we started 2020, we started it with a lot of vibe and energy, looking forward to celebrating all the milestones that have been mentioned by many of you who have spoken before me. The UN turned 75 in 2020. We celebrated 25 years of Beijing as you are gathered here today to also reflect upon in 2020. Security Council Resolution 1325 turns 20. UN Women turns 10. 2020 is the end of the first AU Women's Decade and indeed the beginning of a new decade that focuses on financial inclusion for women. All these are amazing milestones and amazing events that were encouraging us as we started the year. But guess what? The year was struck by a pandemic, COVID-19, which has actually almost put to a standstill everything that we had planned for the year. However, we thank God for technology, and we thank God for you young people who are able to use technology effectively. Today, we are meeting more than 100 people together from all over Africa, many countries across Africa, having a meeting and a forum through technology. So we want to embrace technology and thank you guys for actually making technology work for the women and girls of Africa and for us to achieve gender equality through technology. That said, UN Women is very, very grateful for the Office of the Youth Envoy for inviting us to partner with them and the other partners as they move forward with the campaign and the efforts around bringing the young women and men of Africa around BEIJING+25, but also the Generation Equality Forum and platforms. I do know that what we have started today will make Africa shine and will make Africa drive the whole generation equality agenda. And I'm looking forward to your conversations and recommendations of an action plan that will be shared globally through Anika and others who are members of the BEIJING+25 Youth Task Force from Africa. Allow me to just share a few data that could help you as you go through your deliberations in the group work. As shared earlier on, and as I've also said, it's been 25 years since Beijing. A lot has been achieved, but a lot more needs to be done. As has been shared earlier on, not a single country has achieved gender equality since 1995. And even Women has recently produced a report which is called BEIJING+25 in Review, where we are looking at what has happened since 1995. And the data in that report is really quite disturbing at some level. For example, 1 billion people have escaped from extreme poverty since 1990, but poverty still remains to have a female face. So it means that all those who still remain in poverty, most of them are women and girls. And then that discrepancy needs to be addressed. We've also seen a number of out-of-school children at primary and lower secondary school levels, nearly halved since 1995. However, 32 million girls of primary age are still out of school, and this cannot be allowed to continue into the next decade and beyond. The rate of child marriage has declined from 1 in 4 to 1 in 5, but we still have 650 million women alive in the world today who were married before their 18th birthday. Again, we cannot allow any girl to be married before they turn 18. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, 40% of girls marry before the age of 18. And African countries have counted for 15 of the highest rates of child marriage. Therefore, we need to really pull our sleeves up and end child marriage in Africa. If you now look at the issue of poverty, as I said earlier on, and of course the impact of COVID on our populations around the world, we've also noticed that by 2021, around 431 million women and girls will be living on less than $1.90 per day, including 47 million who will be pushed into poverty as a result of COVID-19. The impacts of COVID-19 are not just economic, they are also social and they are also personal. The shifts of funds to pandemic response is hampering women's access to sexual and reproductive health. Violence against women and girls has increased, and reports have increased around the world and in Africa particularly, as widespread stay-at-home orders force women and girls to shelter in place with their abusers, often with tragic consequences. More people at home also means that the burden of unpaid care and domestic work has increased for women and girls. Women are also facing higher rates of COVID-19 transmissions and fatalities, and are most exposed to the secondary impacts, including loss of earnings and livelihoods. As you know, most of the sectors that have been hard hit by the pandemic, the majority of the employees in those sectors are women. And therefore, you can understand how devastating the pandemic has been to our women and girls. That said, I would like to leave you with encouragement as young people of Africa and say, every statistics I've shared with you has a face. It could be your face. It could be your sister's face. It could be your daughter's face. It could be your cousin, or your nephew's face. Therefore, it is your responsibility to take the bull by the horn and fight all these vices of inequality, abuse of human rights, and discrimination that the women and girls of Africa continue to face. I am confident that all of you who are on this call today have come on this forum because you feel you have a role to play, be it men or women, young men or young women. You all have what it takes to make Africa different and to make the world different and to bring us gender equality in the next decade. I want to thank you all for your participation and thank my colleagues at the AUC who have organized this meeting, particularly the Office of the Youth Envoy, but indeed my colleague from Gender Directorate who has spoken before me, and others who have brought UN Women into this space. We stand ready to support you moving forward, and we look forward to the outcome of your deliberations. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chiamaka.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Letty Chiwara, and thank you so much to UN Women for their support so far. I am glad to have had you with us. All our speakers today have been amazing. And now it is time for us to go back to go into our breakout sessions. The breakout sessions will not be streamed, so please make sure to join us again. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please make sure to join us